Picture this. The sun hangs low over the endless expanse of the American frontier, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. The year is 1887, and in this unforgiving wilderness, where justice comes from the barrel of a gun, survival depends not on the law, but on the choices you make when darkness falls. Tonight, two strangers will cross paths in the most unlikely of circumstances, forever changing the course of their lives. What happens when desperation meets compassion? When a hardened heart encounters genuine fear? This is a story of unlikely alliances, buried secrets, and the courage to stand up for what's right, even when the odds are stacked against you. But before we begin, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you're listening from. The October wind howled across the Colorado plains like a wounded animal, carrying with it the scent of sagebrush and the promise of an early winter. Sam Mitchell sat hunched over his kitchen table, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows across his weathered face as he cleaned his rifle. At 43, Sam had learned that in this godforsaken territory, a clean weapon often meant the difference between seeing another sunrise and becoming buzzard food. His small farmhouse stood isolated, 20 miles from the nearest town of Millbrook, surrounded by nothing but rolling hills and the occasional coyote's cry. It wasn't much to look at. Rough-hewn logs chinked with mud, a sagging porch, and a roof that leaked when the rains came hard, but it was his. After losing everything in the war and spending years drifting from town to town, this patch of earth represented something Sam had almost forgotten: home. The sudden, desperate pounding on his door shattered the night's silence like gunfire. Sam's hand instinctively moved to his Colt .45, thumb working the hammer as he approached the door with measured steps. In his experience, midnight visitors rarely brought good news. The pounding came again, more frantic this time, accompanied by a voice he didn't recognize. Please, sir, I know someone's in there. I can see the light." It was a woman's voice, thick with an accent Sam couldn't quite place. Eastern European, maybe. But more than that, it was laced with raw terror that made his chest tighten despite his better judgment. "Who's out there?" Sam called through the heavy oak door, keeping his gun ready. "Please, sir, hide me. He's coming. I can see his torch down the valley." Sam pressed his eye to the gap in the wooden shutters and peered into the moonlit yard. A figure in a dark, tattered dress stood on his porch, long black hair whipping in the wind. Even in the dim light, he could see she was trembling, her hands pressed against the door as if it were the only thing standing between her and death itself. His practical mind screamed warnings. Strangers meant trouble, especially ones running from something in the middle of the night. But as he watched, the woman slumped against his door, and he caught sight of her face. She was young, maybe 25, with olive skin marked by exhaustion and fear. Her dark eyes, wide with panic, searched the darkness behind her. "He's going to kill me," she whispered, and something in her voice, a broken quality that spoke of too much pain for someone so young, made Sam's decision for him. Against every instinct honed by years of frontier survival, Sam unbolted the door. The woman nearly collapsed into his arms as the door swung open. Up close, he could see the full extent of her ordeal. Her dress was torn in several places, her feet were bare and bleeding, and dry tears had left tracks through the dust on her cheeks. "Thank you," she gasped, stumbling into his modest home. "Thank you, I thought I was going to die out there." Sam quickly bolted the door behind her and moved to the window, scanning the dark landscape for signs of pursuit. Sure enough, a flickering light bobbed through the distant hills, moving steadily toward his farm. "Who's chasing you?" he asked, not taking his eyes from the window. The woman wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the warmth from his fireplace. "His name is Marcus Kane. He used to work for the railroad, until they fired him for what he did to the Chinese workers. Now he tracks people for money." "What people?" She was quiet for a long moment, and when Sam turned to look at her, he saw shame written across her features. "People like me. Roma. Gypsies, you'd call us. There's a bounty on my head." Sam felt his stomach drop. He'd heard stories about bounty hunters who specialized in tracking down immigrants, Indians, and other groups that some folks considered undesirable. It was ugly business, but it was legal in most territories. "What did you do?" he asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. The woman, she still hadn't told him her name, looked up at him with eyes that held too much sorrow for someone so young. "I witnessed something I shouldn't have. A murder in Kansas City. The man who did it has influence, money. Instead of facing justice, he put a bounty on my head, claiming I stole from him." She pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her dress and handed it to Sam. Even in the candlelight, he could make out the words. "Wanted, Romani woman, approximately 25 years old. Theft and vagrancy. $500 reward. Dead or alive." $500 was more money than Sam saw in 2 years of farming. He looked at the woman, really looked at her, and saw not the ugly gypsy the poster described, but a human being who was running for her life. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Esmeralda," she replied. "Esmeralda Rosetti. And I know what you're thinking. $500 is a lot of money for a man living out here alone." Sam folded the poster and handed it back to her. "It is, but I've never been much good at following other people's ideas of right and wrong." The light outside was getting closer. Sam could now make out the silhouette of a rider pushing his horse hard across the plains. He had maybe 10 minutes before the man reached his property. "There's a root cellar beneath the kitchen," Sam said, moving to a trapdoor hidden under a braided rug. "It's not comfortable, but it's hidden. Stay quiet, no matter what you hear up here." Esmeralda grasped his hand as he helped her toward the cellar. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Sam paused, thinking of his own years of running after the war, of sleeping in barns and begging for work, of the few people who had shown him kindness when he needed it most. "Maybe that's exactly why I should help," he said. As Esmeralda disappeared into the cellar, Sam quickly erased any trace of her presence, smoothing the rug, checking for muddy footprints, and positioning himself casually at his kitchen table with his rifle-cleaning kit spread out before him. His heart hammered against his ribs, but his hands remained steady. The war had taught him how to appear calm when death was close. The hoofbeats stopped just outside his door, followed by the jingle of spurs and the creak of leather as the rider dismounted. Sam continued methodically cleaning his weapon, forcing his breathing to remain even and natural. The knock that came was nothing like Esmeralda's desperate pounding. This was controlled, authoritative, the knock of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. Evening came a gravelly voice. "Name's Marcus Kane. I'm looking for someone, and I believe she might have passed this way." Sam set down his cleaning rod and walked to the door, rifle held casually but ready. When he opened it, he found himself facing a man who looked exactly like what he was, a predator. Kane stood about 6 feet tall, with pale eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of Sam's appearance and the interior of his home. His clothes were travel-stained but expensive, and a pearl-handled revolver sat low on his hip with the easy accessibility of someone who used it often. "Bit late for social calls," Sam observed, keeping his voice neutral. Kane's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Indeed, but my quarry doesn't keep regular hours." He pulled out the same wanted poster Esmeralda had shown Sam. Roma woman, about 25. Dark hair, olive skin. Goes by several names, but most recently Esmeralda Rosetti. I've been tracking her for 3 days, and her trail leads right to your door. Haven't seen anyone matching that description. Sam lied smoothly. Like you said, it's late. Most folks around here are in bed by now. Kane's pale eyes narrowed. Mind if I look around? Just to be thorough. Actually, I do mind. Sam shifted his rifle slightly, not pointing it at Kane, but making sure the bounty hunter could see it clearly. This is my property, and I don't take kindly to strangers wanting to search my home. The two men stared at each other for a long moment, the tension thick as summer humidity. Kane's hand rested on his gun butt, and Sam could practically see the wheels turning in the bounty hunter's mind. Was this farmer worth the trouble? Or should he press the issue? Of course, Kane finally said, though his tone suggested the matter was far from settled. I respect a man's property rights, but I should mention that harboring a fugitive is a federal crime. The penalty is quite severe. Good thing I'm not harboring anyone then, Sam replied evenly. Kane stepped back but didn't move toward his horse. Instead, he studied Sam's face in the moonlight, as if trying to read his thoughts. "You know, Mr. Mitchell. Sam Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell, you strike me as an intelligent man. $500 is a considerable sum. More than a small farmer like yourself might see in several years, I'd imagine." Sam felt his jaw clench. "What are you getting at?" "I'm saying that if you were to remember seeing this woman, or if she were to show up here later, I'd be very generous with my gratitude. Half the bounty, $250, just for pointing me in the right direction." The offer hung in the air between them like smoke. Sam thought of his leaking roof, his dwindling supplies, the harsh winter approaching. $250 would solve a lot of problems. But then he thought of Esmeralda's terrified eyes and trembling hands, and the shame in her voice when she'd spoken of being hunted like an animal. "I'll keep that in mind," Sam said finally. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got an early day tomorrow." Kane nodded, but his smile had turned predatory. "I'm sure we'll speak again soon, Mr. Mitchell. This territory isn't that large, and I'm very good at my job." The bounty hunter swung back onto his horse, but instead of riding away, he guided his mount to a small rise about 100 yards from Sam's house. There, silhouetted against the star-filled sky, Kane settled into watch. Sam closed and bolted his door, then moved to the window. The message was clear. Kane suspected he was lying and intended to wait for Esmeralda to reveal herself. "Damn," Sam muttered under his breath. He moved to the cellar entrance and quietly lifted the trapdoor. "He's not leaving," he whispered into the darkness below. "He's watching the house." Esmeralda's voice came up from the cellar, barely audible. "Then I'm trapped." Sam stared out at the motionless figure on the hill. The smart thing to do would be to send Esmeralda on her way once Kane left, wash his hands of the whole situation. But something about the bounty hunter's cold eyes and predatory smile made Sam's skin crawl. The man wasn't just doing a job, he was enjoying the hunt. "Maybe not," Sam said quietly, "but we're going to need a plan." As he began to formulate an idea, Sam couldn't help but wonder what he was getting himself into. He'd lived alone for so long, avoiding complications and other people's problems. Now, in the space of an hour, he'd committed himself to helping a stranger against a man who killed for money. But as he looked at the wanted poster again, something else caught his attention. The description of Esmeralda's supposed crimes was vague, and the reward was unusually high for simple theft. In his experience, bounties that large usually meant someone powerful wanted the target silenced permanently. Outside, Kane remained motionless on the hill, a dark reminder that some hunts only ended one way. The night stretched endlessly as Sam kept watch from his window, tracking Kane's silhouette against the star-studded sky. The bounty hunter hadn't moved in over 2 hours, patient as death itself. Below in the cellar, Sam could hear Esmeralda's soft movements as she tried to find a comfortable position among his stores of potatoes and preserved goods. As dawn began to paint the eastern horizon in shades of pink and gold, Sam finally saw Kane stir. The bounty hunter rode down to the house, dismounted, and knocked again. "Morning, Mr. Mitchell," Kane called through the door. "I was hoping we might continue our conversation." Sam opened the door, making sure Kane could see. He was holding his rifle. "Don't recall having much of a conversation last night." "No, I suppose we didn't." Kane's pale eyes swept past Sam into the interior of the house. "I've been thinking about what you said, about not seeing anyone. Thing is, I found some interesting tracks around your property this morning." Sam's blood ran cold, but he kept his expression neutral. "Lots of things make tracks out here. Coyotes, rabbits, deer. These were made by bare human feet." Kane interrupted, pulling out a small notebook. "Small feet, woman-sized, leading right to your front door." The two men stared at each other, the pretense finally dropping away. Kane knew Sam was lying, and Sam knew that Kane knew. The only question now was what happened next. "Like I said," Sam repeated carefully, "I haven't seen anyone." Kane's hand moved to his gun. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to search your property. You can cooperate, or I can come back with a federal marshal and a warrant. Either way, I'm finding that woman." And what makes you so sure she's worth all this trouble? Sam asked, stalling for time while his mind raced through his options. Something shifted in Kane's expression, a flash of satisfaction that confirmed Sam's growing suspicions. Let's just say she saw something she shouldn't have in Kansas City. Something that embarrassed some very important people. Important enough to put a bounty on an innocent woman's head. Kane laughed, but there was no humor in it. Innocent? Is that what she told you? Did she mention that she witnessed a murder, Mr. Mitchell? That she saw Congressman William Hartwell shoot an unarmed Chinese immigrant in cold blood? Sam felt the world tilt slightly. A congressman. No wonder the bounty was so high and the poster so vague. If she witnessed a murder, why isn't she testifying instead of running? Because dead witnesses don't testify, Kane said simply. And Congressman Hartwell has friends in very high places. Friends who prefer their problems to disappear quietly. The casual way Kane discussed murder made Sam's stomach turn, but it also confirmed what he'd already begun to suspect. This wasn't about justice. It was about silencing a witness to protect a powerful man's reputation. So you're going to kill her, Sam said flatly. I'm going to collect my bounty, Kane corrected. What happens after that isn't my concern. Sam studied the bounty hunter's face and saw no trace of conscience, no hint of moral struggle. Kane was exactly what he appeared to be, a man who killed for money and slept soundly afterward. I can't let you do that, Sam said quietly. Kane's smile was razor-thin. Mr. Mitchell, I think you're overestimating your position here. I'm a duly appointed bounty hunter with a legal warrant. You're a farmer with a leaky roof and empty pockets. Stand aside. No. The word hung in the air between them like a challenge. Kane's hand moved to his gun, but Sam was ready. He raised his rifle, not pointing it directly at Kane, but making his intentions clear. You're making a serious mistake, Kane warned. Interfering with a bounty hunter is a federal crime. I could shoot you right now and claim self-defense. You could try, Sam agreed. But I was a sniper in the war. At this range, I don't miss. For the first time, Kane looked uncertain. His pale eyes flicked from Sam's rifle to his face, calculating odds and angles. This woman isn't worth dying for. You don't even know her. Maybe not, but I know you. Before Kane could respond, a voice called out from behind Sam. Please, don't fight over me. I'll go with him. Sam turned to see Esmeralda emerging from the cellar, her dark hair disheveled, but her chin raised with dignity. She looked at Kane with undisguised hatred but no fear. Ah, there she is, Kane said, relaxing slightly. Miss Rosetti, you've led me quite a chase. I know what you're going to do to me, Esmeralda said, and I know why. But this man has done nothing wrong. Let him be. Kane drew his gun, pointing it casually at Esmeralda. How very noble. Mr. Mitchell, step aside. Your heroic gesture is appreciated, but this is where it ends. Sam felt time slowing, the way it had during the war when life-and-death decisions compressed into split seconds. He could see Kane's finger tightening on the trigger, see Esmeralda closing her eyes and preparing for the end. But Sam had made his choice the moment he'd opened his door. His rifle boomed in the confined space of the doorway, and Kane spun backward, his shot going wild as Sam's bullet took him high in the shoulder. The bounty hunter's gun flew from his hand, landing in the dust several feet away. Kane lay on his back, cursing and clutching his shoulder, while blood seeped between his fingers. You've signed your own death warrant, Mitchell. When word gets back to Kansas City. Word's not getting back anywhere, Sam interrupted, keeping his rifle trained on the wounded man. At least not from you. Esmeralda stared at Sam with wide eyes. You can't kill him in cold blood. That makes you no better than him. Sam considered this, looking down at Kane. The man was wounded but not fatally, and his eyes still held the cold calculation of a predator. Given the chance, he'd kill them both without hesitation. No, Sam said finally, but I can make sure he doesn't follow us. He moved to Kane's horse, pulling a rope from the saddle. Esmeralda, help me tie him up. We've got some traveling to do. As they bound Kane's hands and feet, the bounty hunter glared at them both. This isn't over. There are others like me, and they won't be as patient. Maybe, Sam agreed. But that's tomorrow's problem. He looked at Esmeralda, seeing her clearly for the first time in daylight. She wasn't beautiful in the conventional sense. Her features were too strong, her skin too weathered by hardship. But there was something in her dark eyes that spoke of courage and integrity, qualities that had become rare in his experience. So he said, "What happens now?" With Kane securely tied and left with enough water to survive until someone found him, Sam and Esmeralda set out across the plains on his sturdy workhorse, their few possessions packed in saddlebags. Sam had taken the precaution of disabling Kane's horse, not injuring it, but removing its shoes and tack, so it would take time for the bounty hunter to pursue them even if he freed himself. As they rode toward the distant mountains, Esmeralda told Sam her full story. She had been working as a seamstress in Kansas City when she'd witnessed Congressman Hartwell murder a Chinese laborer who had threatened to expose corruption in the railroad contracts. Instead of going to the local police, who were likely in Hartwell's pocket, she tried to contact federal authorities. "That was my mistake," she said, her voice barely audible over the steady clop of hooves. "I trusted the wrong people. Someone warned Hartwell, and suddenly I was the one with a bounty on my head." Sam listened without judgment, understanding better than most what it meant to have your life upended by forces beyond your control. "Where will you go now?" "There's a settlement in Oregon," Esmeralda replied. "My cousin lives there with her husband. They have a small farm, and the local sheriff is an honest man, or so I've heard. If I can make it that far." "That's over 800 miles, Sam said. "And Kane won't be the only one looking for you now." They rode in silence for several miles, both lost in thought. The landscape around them was harsh but beautiful. Rolling hills covered in autumn grass, stands of cottonwoods along the creek beds, and the endless dome of sky overhead. It was the kind of country that either killed you or made you stronger, with no middle ground. As the sun climbed higher, Sam found himself stealing glances at his companion. In the morning light, with her hair tied back and her face cleaned of dust and tears, Esmeralda looked younger and more vulnerable. But there was steel in her spine, a determination that reminded him of the cavalry wives he'd known during the war, women who had endured hardships that would have broken weaker people. "I have some money saved," Sam said suddenly. "Not much, but enough to get us to Oregon if we're careful." Esmeralda turned to look at him in surprise. "Us?" Sam realized he'd made the decision without even thinking about it. His farm was compromised now. Kane would return with reinforcements, and harboring a fugitive had made Sam a wanted man as well. But more than that, he found he didn't want to return to his solitary existence. "I figure we both need a fresh start," he said, "and Oregon's supposed to be good farming country." For the first time since he'd met her, Esmeralda smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her entire face. "You would do that? Leave everything behind for someone you barely know?" "I left everything behind once before," Sam replied. "Turned out to be the best decision I ever made." They made good time through the day, stopping only to rest the horse and refill their water bottles at a clear stream. As evening approached, they made camp in a sheltered valley, building a small fire and sharing the food Sam had packed. "Tell me about your farm," Esmeralda said as they ate. "What was it like?" Sam found himself describing not just the physical aspects of his property, but the satisfaction he'd found in coaxing crops from stubborn soil, the peaceful solitude of evening chores, the simple pleasure of watching storms roll across the prairie. As he talked, he realized how much he would miss it, but also how empty it had sometimes felt. "It sounds wonderful," Esmeralda said softly. "I've never had a real home. My family traveled constantly when I was young, and after they died, I just drifted." "What about you?" Sam asked. "What do you dream about?" Esmeralda stared into the fire, her dark eyes reflecting the dancing flames. "A place where I belong, where I can use my hands to create something beautiful instead of just surviving." She pulled a small piece of embroidered cloth from her dress. "I made this. It's not much, but it's mine." The embroidery was exquisite. Tiny flowers and vines worked in brilliant colors that seemed to glow in the firelight. Sam could see the hours of careful work that had gone into it, the skill and artistry that spoke of a talent far beyond mere survival. "It's beautiful," he said honestly. "In Oregon, you could teach others. Maybe start your own shop." "Maybe," Esmeralda agreed, but her voice held a note of hope that hadn't been there before. They took turns keeping watch through the night, but no pursuit materialized. As dawn broke over the mountains ahead, Sam felt something he hadn't experienced in years: anticipation for the future instead of just grim determination to survive the present. They rode hard for 3 more days, avoiding towns and main roads, living on the supplies Sam had packed and what they could forage along the way. On the evening of the 3rd day, they crested a hill and saw the lights of a settlement spread out in the valley below. "Millfield," Sam said, consulting his map. "We can resupply here and catch the stage west." As they rode toward the town, Esmeralda reached over and touched Sam's arm. "Whatever happens in Oregon, I want you to know, you saved my life. Not just from Kane, but from giving up hope." Sam looked at her, seeing not the frightened woman who had pounded on his door, but someone who had found the strength to rebuild her life from nothing. "You saved mine too," he said. "I just didn't realize it was broken until now." The lights of Millfield grew brighter as they approached, promising hot meals, soft beds, and the beginning of a journey towards something neither of them had dared to hope for: a chance to build something together. Behind them, the vast expanse of the frontier stretched away into darkness, holding its secrets and its dangers. But ahead lay new possibilities, new horizons, and the promise that even in the harshest country, human decency and courage could still prevail. As they rode into town, Sam couldn't help but smile. For the first time in years, he was no longer running from his past. He was riding toward his future. And he wasn't making the journey alone. 6 months later, the Oregon Territory welcomed them with green valleys, rushing rivers, and soil rich enough to grow anything a person had the patience to tend. Sam and Esmeralda found land near her cousin's farm, built a modest house with their own hands, and slowly began the process of putting down roots. Esmeralda's embroidery skills proved popular with the local women, and she soon had more orders than she could fill. Sam discovered that Oregon's climate suited him as much as its freedom from bounty hunters and corrupt officials. They received word through travelers that Marcus Kane had eventually been found and freed, but that Congressman Hartwell had died in a carriage accident. Some said it wasn't really an accident, that his corruption had finally caught up with him. Either way, the bounty on Esmeralda's head died with him. On a warm spring evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sun set over the Cascade Mountains, Esmeralda turned to Sam with the same smile that had first transformed her face months ago. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Giving up your old life?" Sam considered the question, looking out over the fields they had planted together, the fence they had built, the home they had created. "Not for a minute," he said. "Sometimes the best thing you can do is open your door to a stranger." Esmeralda laughed, a sound like silver bells in the evening air. "Even when that stranger brings trouble?" "Especially then," Sam replied, taking her hand in his. "That's when you find out who you really are." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they sat together in comfortable silence, 2 people who had found in each other not just companionship, but redemption. The frontier had tested them, shaped them, and ultimately given them something neither had expected to find: a place to call home. If you like this story, leave your opinion in the comments and, of course, leave a like and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Big hug and see you soon.